Yeah. Oh, it's really very Hello everyone. This is a bit weird with the mic. Not used to that, but anyways, hello everyone, and thank you very much for coming today. Thank you, our community partner, for attending as well. Firstly, I would like to do a little overview of what we are going to discuss in our presentation. Our presentation focuses on the sources of this content among house owners in the rural area of Amsterdam North. So, to have a little bit of structure, firstly we are going to look into introductions, then followed by literature review, methods, key findings, and lastly recommendations based on our key findings. So to introduce and get a little bit of back knowledge on this project, the city of Amsterdam decided on full transition in terms of sustainable and ecological energy, which means that by the year 2050, 100% of the produced energy needs to be produced locally and sustainably. In order to fulfill this goal, the city of Amsterdam decided on one of the first goals, which is to build 125 megawatts of installed capacity, which translates to 17 wind turbines till the year 2030, which is leading to questions: where are these turbines going to be installed? The city of Amsterdam decided on the rural area of Amsterdam North. However, this raises questions among the people who live there. Since it is an area with 5 villages, approximately 800 households that we are talking about. And therefore, we decided to look into those diverse opinions and concerns that the citizens have. Therefore, our research question is looking into what are the sources of discontent and concerns of homeowners in your northern area of Amsterdam. Followed by our second research question: how does discontent influence perceptions of acceptable compensation? We decided to focus on this specific topic and specifically house owners, since they are the most vulnerable population, since they live there and it's quite hard to move around for many people. And also we decided to focus on the sources of discontent and general any type of concerns, in order to truly understand what is going on, what are the subjective perceptions of house owners, because we think, and also in line with Rosa's article, 2014, that in order to bring and really facilitate policies which make the life better for the citizens, and also which are concerned with the citizens' ideas and different opinions, we need to build a dialogue. Therefore, we want to also investigate the voices of the homeowners and their possible concerns. We are going to follow with the literature review, which is going to be in the form of video, because one of our colleagues couldn't attend.
Our research approach, analytic deliberative approach, alongside clear focus on public participation to address concerns and compensation regarding the interventions. While the perception approach, we agree with Ariane of highlighting the importance of emphasis in decision making. And in line with its ideas on decision making, This study aims to involve various stakeholders, including residents, but also an expert on sustainable energy projects and also measures for such a project, in order to get us to review of relevant literature and iterative thinking during the research process resulted in a focus on the following sources of discontent: negative health effects, destruction of nature, visual pollution, and land participation. In the respective chapters dedicated to these themes, additional sensitizing content like, for example, risk perception, were used in order to study views and feelings towards wind turbine projects.
Okay, so now we will also explain our methodology.
Methodologically, qualitative data was gathered through conducting semi-structured interviews with homeowners. Purposeful sampling methods were used in order to gain access to the target group for this research, and respondents were recruited through our community partner. Thematic analysis were performed in order to identify the source of discontent and Montessori measures for discontent, the Montessori measures for discontent. And of course, informed consent was obtained before we conducted interviews, reflecting our mission to research this difficult topic in an ethical way.
Okay, thank you. Now I will discuss our key findings. Our key findings are in line with the sources of discontent or just our sensitizing concepts that Daniel introduced in the video. So the interviews revealed 4 general sources of discontent: negative health effects, destruction of nature, visual pollution, and superficial participation. Overall, residents do not oppose the energy transition or wind turbines, but they do oppose the location. They believe that the installation of wind turbines shouldn't be at the expense of health or at the expense of nature. Also, several respondents expressed that wind turbines simply do not fit the rural character of rural Amsterdam North. Then, regarding participations, residents are allowed to participate in the decision-making process or discussions around the installment of wind turbines to share their interests and their arguments. However, they strongly question whether their input is really taken into consideration, and it seems like the end cost is already determined, which increases feelings of powerlessness. Then a few respondents even expressed their lack of trust in the municipality, since they do not always seem to adhere to certain regulations. For instance, regulations regarding distance and noise, and this also increases concern and perception of risk. Then, to answer our second research question about compensation, all respondents communicated that there is no proper compensation possible for their concern. In fact, it rather evokes a feeling that the municipality doesn't empathize with their concerns and that their concerns are not really taken into consideration.
So to continue on the key findings, we have some recommendations we'd like to make. The first recommendation, and by far the most important one, is the aim for co-creation. As we have seen in the conducted interviews, it's really clear that overall the local citizens feel that the government doesn't listen to the needs of the local citizens. So instead of not really listening, it's important to really listen, and also, well, as a municipality, to consider actually implementing the needs of the local citizens. And so by co-creation, the goal is to ensure smooth implementation. And important is that residents are not against the placement of wind turbines per se, but they are really against the way they are being treated, and the way the government is just saying, like, we're going to do this and we have no say in this. The second one, as was just stated, is that compensation is no option. It's basically the point is that financial benefits to enhance cooperation by local citizens doesn't work. It feels a disappointment. And here we come back to the same concept of co-creation, which is really important. To get a highest chance of implementation and support of the local citizens, really sitting down and listening to the needs of the local citizens is the most important. And to conclude with some future possibilities for research, it's important to look at the local character of the area. So of course, sustainable energy is very important, and we think that the city of Amsterdam should look at how sustainable energy can be generated, while also taking into account the local character of the area that people live in. And then based on the local area and what makes it so special, certain policies can be made, but it should be really done by combining the needs of both parties. So overall, the conclusion is definitely that as a recommendation, the co-creation is most important. As people feel like they're not being listened to and they're not against new changes of wind turbines per se, but this should be done more by interactions. So, thanks for listening.
We have 4 minutes for some quick questions.
Yes.
I have a question. It might be a little bit outside of your scope, but I'm going to ask out of curiosity. In terms of co-creation, you told me that people don't feel ownership, or they feel like a weerstand.
Yeah.
Resistance towards these organizations or municipalities. Do you think they're willing to participate in co-creation? And how do you make sure that co-creation is not a facade for implementing predetermined decisions?
Well, I think they are willing. They said so in the interviews.
Okay, that's interesting.
Yeah, it's just a way they're being treated that doesn't seem fair with them, so they're willing to cooperate, and in fact they also have ideas about what they could do. And what you say?
How do you make sure that the co-creation is not a facade to still implement things that you already decided on, but give them the feeling of ownership rather than actual ownership?
Yeah, that's a difficult thing because we thought about it as well. And it's quite vague. It's a bit in a gray area, of course, because co-creation is very important, but it's also within the interaction between people. And I guess it's especially for the municipality very important to listen. And based on those conversations, give people the feeling of ownership, and then I think from that standpoint, changes can be.
Because also they had ideas about how to have their own sustainable transition. However, these ideas were just like totally discarded basically. So for example, in the past they had ideas about building their own small wind turbines, but this was not like according to the municipality, not appropriate at the time. Then they also do like the solar panels on their roofs. And now they, like during the interviews, proposed, for example, how you have like around the ring, the like voice canceling things, you know what I mean? Like you can put the solar panels on that, which would also generate possible energy. They were also talking about like smaller wind turbines rather than those like big ones. So yeah, but of course it's a gray area.
Yeah.
Could I ask a question on this sheet on the 4 key findings?
Yes, this one.
Yes, this one, yes. So there are 4 different things that you think are very important for the acceptance of this plan of the City of Amsterdam. And which one you think is the most important one?
I think it's probably superficial participation.
Superficial,
I think
yeah.
at the moment that you really integrate them into the decision-making process and you reach a common agreement, it might even be a case that they also agree that there needs to be a wind turbine somewhere in that area. But it's more about that they don't feel listened to, which is a big source of frustration.
Yes, because the 3 of them are negative ones, but superficial participation is a positive one. So maybe
it's not happening. So that's why it's negative. It's not happening now.
it's not happening yet, not yet, but it could happen.
Yes.
And maybe Amsterdam has promised to have a 50% local property for these windmills. So this maybe has not been understood very well by the inhabitants.
But that is also the thing that the people express,
Yeah.
that they are not interested in any type of compensation because they cannot
Oh,
compensate monetarily for like health
Okay.
issues, visual
Okay.
pollution and such.
so for them, it's not important.
No, it is important. It is part of the problem
Okay,
that we found out.
That's a good question.
okay, thank you.
Okay, well done. Thank you very much. So we have scheduled 15 minutes for each group. So if your presentation is less than 15 minutes, then you have some time for questions before the last round of questions. It's centralizing efficiency. Is that this one? No, that I could not with the mic. Did you send it as link by? Okay, so maybe I downloaded this one? Yes. Yeah, that's good. But I downloaded from the discussion. You want to more like I have a bunch of
Hello, everyone. I'll give the introduction brief because we had some technical difficulties. Thank you, Jan, for being here. Yeah, we also did research for the CDR into the wind turbines along the north. And yeah, we also wanted to start with the same introduction about Amsterdam having plans to have an energy transition by 2030, which requires them to put down 17 new wind turbines in Amsterdam, and London North being one of the search areas that they currently consider. So when the CDR came to us with the request to map stakeholder interests in the energy transition, we noticed some possibility for land use related conflicts, meaning some stakeholders might have different ideas about how a certain piece of land should be used. So therefore we decided to mostly focus on the power structures and power relations between stakeholders, while other groups focus on other aspects. And this angle is specifically important because we can analyze if certain stakeholders get a fair say in the whole policy process. And however, this is not meant to be a polarizing or a polarizing research that puts stakeholders up against each other, but more so a general analysis of of the policy making process through governmental narratives and the resident experiences. And we have identified the following question as our main research question. What are the underlying power relations and structures of decision-making processes in the case of placing wind turbines in Amsterdam North? And notably, we have divided our sub-questions into a top-down angle and the bottom-up angle, meaning top-down is how certain governmental bodies or institutions make policies or have a powerful decision that influences residents and inhabitants, while bottom-up means the power and sense of agency, so how they can influence the process from the residents themselves upward to the policy that is being made. And the first sub-question and the second sub-question are about this top-down angle, with one focusing on the general narratives from all layers of governmental and organizational policy making from the world to the local governments. The second one focuses mostly on the municipality of Amsterdam itself. And I don't know why they are numbered with ones, but the third question focuses on the feeling of being able to influence that residents have, and fourth question mostly on emotions involved.
So it's good already explained, we have a top-down and bottom-up approach. And in the top-down approach, discourse and framing are both really important concepts in analyzing how power is conveyed and acted. And discourse is basically simply said a way of a meaning is conveyed through written text or speech. And framing can be used as a tool to convey a certain message. For the bottom-up approach, we for the third sub-question specifically, sense of agency and agency power is very important. Sense of agency is more about the experience of the residents and how they experience agency, and agentic power is more about how this is done, performed. For the last sub-question, emotions is of course important and more central, because emotions kind of serves as the connection in between public acceptance of wind energy and what are these social nuances behind these emotions and these residents' experience. Overall, public acceptance of wind energy from RUDOT is going to be very useful in all of the analysis. When we go to methods, which is again divided into top-down and bottom-up approach, and for the top-down section, its theoretical framework is realized basically, and based on that and based on these findings, a discourse analysis is conducted, and from there a certain narrative came forward, where we see how language constructs knowledge, ideology, and power. Initially, we also wanted to interview municipality actors, but due to a lack of time, connections, and social connections, and cooperation basically, it was very difficult to reach those municipality actors. However, the discourse analysis has proven to be very useful in the analysis on its own. For the bottom-up approach, we have conducted 10 semi-structured interviews with residents in the reports. We do want to say that it's not really representative, well, because it's first of all 10 participants, and second, we weren't able to reach participants from every small town in London. And based on the transcriptions, we did a deductive and inductive coding strategy, because we also found relevant things after we analyzed the interviews. Okay, so for the key findings, it's easier to do it also in top-down and bottom-up, but afterwards we'll try to integrate it into one big theme or story to make it a bit more clear and thread it back to the main research question. for the top-down key findings, what we saw is that officials from all different layers of governance, such as the EU, the UN, national governments, but also the regional and municipality itself, that they all have the story that climate change is an urgent threat that needs efficiency and scrutiny. And they sell it in most of their official documents as striving on a global scale towards a green, just, and prosperous future, which most of all has to be socially acceptable. They don't really say what they mean by socially acceptable, but when you look at more practical documents of regional and municipal levels, then you see that this translates into regional and local strategies to involve more citizens and stakeholders into the development and implementation of these proposed strategies, which in terms of the municipality of Amsterdam, they focus a lot on renewable energy. And the only way to do this is thus through solidarity and trust, as they say, between all actors involved. However, as we've seen in official documents of the municipality, often neglects the parts that the residents have within the decision-making processes. So they consider themselves, the municipality actors, and Amsterdam West, which is the regionale energiestrategie, the regional strategy for energy, that they often consider themselves as the end point in the discussion and as the only legitimate authority which can decide where these windmills are going, or wind turbines are going to take place. And despite like having conversations with residents or organizations, they often try to incorporate them into the story, but as we have seen, their attempts at participation from other residents or stakeholders can just be seen as like formality participation and not actual participation.
I wanted to add some small part to the fact that there's this sense of urgency and the narrative that the climate change is an urgent matter, which in the case, at least for the municipalities, also used as a narrative to legitimize forcing people into participation in the whole energy transition, which in itself is also a narrative or discourse is used to have the final say in the policy making that requires a powerful position. It's a narrative of power.
So that's what we see in the official documents and the narratives they put forward towards the readers. On the bottom-up part, we have spoken with a lot of residents of the area, and we saw that most people that were interviewed had a low subjective perception of personal agency, which is this the ability of individuals that they feel that they can influence their surroundings and possible plans. And they had the feeling that there was actually like no point in doing anything other than participating in the elections and in the processes, because they felt that was the only way that they were like taken as face value, that their voices were being heard. And this contrasted with like, they had a really negative view of the decision-making processes and participation invites of especially the US. Some respondents even said that they felt they were only like participating symbolically, and that their opinions did not really matter in the end. And thus they expressed a lack of trust in the realization of their desired outcome, whatever it may be, from all aspects. So for the persons in favor of the plans and the ones against it. And what we also saw through the exploration of emotions of the residents is that there are a lot of feelings of distrust, worry, and frustration on all sides. And I really want to say sides from all actors. And these feelings suggest that there's a real lack of like real participations. They had suspicions surrounding the intentions of the municipality, and that lack of trust on research on like health effects that the municipality put forward, that they not really that they were skeptical about those. And as we can see when we look at the main question is that power dynamics between the different fields of governance indeed do play a role in that complex policymaking. And that on paper that the governing bodies basically give more room to residents and stakeholders to express their opinions and to influence potential processes, but that is clearly like only a formality because they like feel like they don't really have anything to say that they will take over. And despite the emphasis on climate change and much needed transition as a social obligation, something that is imminent that we have to do now together as a whole, most of the responsibility eventually falls on the residents and the organizations and other stakeholders to exert themselves and their voices. And that it's their responsibility, and that like according with the feeling that it doesn't really matter because the voices aren't really heard. So these feelings of distrust and lack of agency do provide valuable insights into how an unequal power balance can create this disconnection between policy and everyday experiences.
So finally, we work into formulate 3 recommendations based on our key findings. Starting with recommendation, we focused on the municipalities' efforts to initiate participation with the residents, and we we suggest the municipality adopts a more integrated, deliberative decision-making process in which the voices of the residents are taken seriously, and that the residents are considered as people with own interest and not just as opponents or proponents, but people with real interest, and that by taking their interests into consideration, they could be part of the decision-making process, and this is based on the process idea of an deliberative process in which the social sphere is integrated with other systems in society to make decisions about decisions. Second recommendation focuses on the residents. And we suggest that if the residents really want their voice to be heard, they could initiate more mobilization, collective mobilization initiatives to exert power on the matter. Based on our research, we found that they might not realize how effective collective mobilization could be to let their voice heard in the decision-making process. And the third is that we think maybe next year, if there would be another collaboration between IVA and CDR, that bottom-up approach of this research it could be replicated with a more diverse population group, since the respondents we interviewed were not really diverse in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds. So we suggest that more interviews would be held with people across the highway to get more different insights on perceptions and reasonings in regards to their news. So that's it.
We have to move on to the next group because of time, but we have 10 minutes for Q&A after.
So welcome again, and thank you for paying attention to our presentation. Our presentation is called Deconstructing the Narratives of the Amsterdam Windmill Conflict. And our research project begins with the given information that there's a lot of disagreement among the various stakeholders, especially among the villagers and the municipal authorities. And we explored how these different groups perceive the windmill project using a narrative approach to appeal information. By gaining a deeper understanding of the public narratives and frames, we could evaluate how the windmill project is connected to a wider public narrative on sustainability. And also the risk associated with it highlights the interactivity between the social phenomena on a whole and public information. So therefore, our main research question is, what are the competing narratives regarding the windmill project? And we divided it in 3 sub-questions. The first one is, what are the competing narratives regarding, what are the dominant themes shaping the opinions and positions of the residents? The second is, what is the narrative of the municipality of Amsterdam? And the third one is, how do the competing narratives frame the windmill conflict in newspaper coverage? So now we go over to the literature review.
Yes, so our research is based on 3 kind of theoretical fields. The most foundational one is the social constructionist view that people form opinions based on their beliefs and attitudes, and also the beliefs and attitudes of the people around them, and the knowledge and information that they are exposed to. So there's like a kind of exchange going on at all times. Then following from that, we also use the concept of narrative to make sense of opinion formation. So when we tell something to the world, we do so in a specific way, and we make decisions about which characters to include and by how events happened. Like that is never neutral, and therefore when studying opinions, we need to take that into account. And that also, of course, affects how people kind of react to your opinions. And then due to the focus on narrative, we are firmly in the field of the discursive study of conflict. Discourses are crucial in understanding conflict because how we choose to speak about phenomena influences how we see them, and that in turn again influences what these conflicts actually are. And thus we need to study the discursive strategies that are part of conflicts just as much as the content, because, for example, how we frame something is really crucial in how that arrives kind of in the wider perception of the world. And then following from that, we have some sensitizing concepts. Of course, the most important one are narrative and framing. Narrative being the way in which we talk about things, and framing is a strategy within narrative construction. Framing is like interpretative schemas, and so when we talk about things, we leave out certain information and include others, and that basically makes us define problems in a specific way, and that makes us act in a certain way. So we are studying that, and then additionally to that, we have, of course, because of the subject of windmills, the concept of NIMBYism, NIMBY meaning not in my backyard. And that is kind of the elephant in the room in this research, because people are not necessarily excited to be called a NIMBY, and it's a very kind of puts you in a box, and it's kind of a negative and not very nice concept. So researchers have said that it is important to move beyond NIMBYism in understanding opposition to windmills, because it doesn't really do anything to say, oh, you are against windmills, because you are a NIMBY. It's not very productive. So we wanted to look beyond
that and see what actually makes people decide their opinion as negative. And at the same time, we realize that it's an important concept in the discourse because it's very popular and a lot of people have used it. And we actually found that the people in our research are aware of the concept and kind of use it in their own identity, like framing. So that is important as well. Now we move on to methodology. Okay, so we wanted to look at narrative, so how do people tell stories? And therefore we interviewed the municipality and the residents, and we looked at local newspapers and newspapers nationally to view their opinion. And we did this through narrative analysis for the municipality and thematic analysis for the residents. And we wanted to do a discourse analysis, but then you have to know the Dutch language. So that was not possible, so we did a third analysis instead. So over to the findings. For the residents, it was really interesting. There were pro and anti-residents for the wind turbines, and all were actually pro sustainable energy. So everyone wanted a climate action. However, the anti-supporters did not like the turbines to be in their backyard to have damaging their health and damaging the nature around them. So they use kind of rational arguments like health damage as argument in this conflict. And they felt really frustrated by the municipality because they felt powerless and they felt the municipality all made the decisions without them. However, the municipality told us they have people for this conflict to make this democratic decision. So there seems to be kind of a miscommunication there. The municipality, so the residents view the municipality as the main opponent. However, the municipality did not see this as their main opponent, but just another actor in the whole network for this process of wind turbines. So they actually feel not really powerful, they feel actually powerless, because there are many stakeholders, such as the provincial state, that limit their decision making. And to justify the arguments for why they want to put their turbines down there, is because they have the climate goals they want to reach, and everybody has to help with that. And also they have the scientific justification of the environmental impact assessment report. So in that way they can say, oh, so based on science, we can say this turbine has to be located down here. And so for the couple of houses who might be impacted by the turbines, they say, well, some houses have to be sacrificed for the greater good, because we all want climate action, we all want sustainable energy. Some houses have to be are affected, and we will take measures to make it easier for them, but they will come anyway. And the media really portrays this conflict between residents versus municipality. And this is also why residents will read about this conflict between those two and will get their opinion from the media. So they will think, oh, it's the municipality who is the villain in this story. So now we go over to the recommendations.
Okay, so the struggle with the concept of power is reflected in the residents' narratives, but also within municipal authorities. Because the struggle is heavily said with higher authorities such as provincial states. But the redistribution of cost and benefits has to be made. So it's important to take a look at who has the agency to make these decisions and who is excluded from it and how to improve this. But since this conflict is deeply rooted, it's not that easy just to give a solution. But yeah, although we just want to give some recommendations towards our community partner and the municipality. So firstly, the municipality already has set up, because they said they already set up some programs to get the residents involved, but this seems to be quite invisible, so they need to invest more in creating contact with residents. Also, we suggest that the municipality should network with other municipalities to change their knowledge. And another important thing we saw is that it's really important to reframe the windmill project, since there's such a negative association with it. And the frameworks of the communities and their activism seems to have a big role in the information of the residents, such as Wind Alarm. They adopt a strategy that they go around in town and spread their words and flyer and campaigns. So we should suggest to apply this strategy, but for a pro-windmill activism way. So reforming a dialogue is very important, and a technique of deep canvassing could be applied. In this technique, people engage in non-confrontational discussion, so it's an open discussion, whereby people are invited to identify, examine and reconsider the biases they have about wind turbines. So it's very important to pay more attention to positive narratives and circulate them around town. Are there any questions?
We're the last group, so let's open up the floor to questions. First, Jan, to all the groups, to this group and also the last one. And then we can have a general discussion for another 10 minutes.
I liked both last two presentations also very much. And I had questions, but I had to do it quickly. So my question on this presentation, which I like very much, very interesting theoretical background, is on the first sheet. This one. Why does this windmill have 4 wings? And the other one too.
It's an AI generated.
Okay, it's very nice. But the more serious question is about your last sheet, and this is you tell about the different problems that there are, and that we need to have a non-confrontational discussion. I think this is really a good remark. We should go in that direction of non-confrontational discussions. And my question is, do you have the impression that there is a time difference, a time development in these opinions, that people are gradually shifting, maybe because of the news of the melting ice and the polar bears and so on, or are they just stuck in one opinion?
I think that from our research, more is the case that the polarization has become more cemented, and I think if we look at wider social developments, also generally sustainability issues have become more polarized, and like pro-environmentalism has become more associated with just like left-wing politics and like anti-environmentalism with like conservatism. So I think that in general polarization has become stronger.
And I spoke to the municipality, and they said during the war from Ukraine, you saw a shift in changing opinion of sustainable energy, and they wanted more sustainable energy locally generated because then we could be more independent. And so that's what the shift.
Okay, yeah. Thank you.
Questions from the floor?
I have a question, because we weren't able to interview municipality actors. And what we found from the residents' perspective is that often the klankbordgroepen or other participative techniques, often people were sorted in against and in favor. Did that come back in your interviews as well, how they approach the participation?
You mean participation of the residents?
Yeah.
Well, they found a lot of people did not have an opinion, did not care about wind turbines because they had other plans. There are other problems they had to care for. So they had a lot, the municipality actually did a lot of time thinking about how will we approach these people who do not have a strong opinion, and do we want to know these opinions? So they actually tried but did not get any answers from those people without opinion.
I have a question for group 2. Yes, so you made a very important observation about the top-down discourse. And the sort of like the from the policy side of things, they position themselves as this project is for a just future, that it's implies they have some kind of moral high ground with this kind of project. At the same time, they are in a way forcing it on to residents. So did you notice any evidence of some kind of reflexivity, or how do they reconcile this contradiction?
From the municipality?
She mostly went into all the governmental things, but she had to go, but I analyzed the REST document, and in this document they talk about 2 things related to the residents. Is one, that they did workshops, and the second thing is that they try to be transparent to stakeholders. Wait, what was the question again? The specific question?
That whether there was an indication of how do they reconcile this, the moral high ground of this being a just policy, but imposing it on, taking quite a top-down approach.
Because the only things that would imply that they took residents into account in this document itself was the workshops and transparency thing, but they used those in itself to probably implicitly form this justification for, we have contact with residents, and therefore this whole project is like this whole policy is just and in accordance with what the residents want. But ultimately what came out of the discourse analysis was that they speak on behalf of Amsterdam. They ask the government of the Netherlands directly to force people to participate to the energy transition. They call people who don't have solar panels on the roof laggards, and it's in general all these things that I have summed up in my article make it seem as though those 2 things about the transparency and the workshops are very much based on a formality rather than intrinsic ethical considerations toward residents.
So they have a very narrow definition of what would constitute just transitions.
Yeah, at least in the document I researched.
And they didn't consider the residents to be stakeholders, right?
Yeah, there was some language that they made a sum up in the workshop or somewhere around there that some actor and then stakeholders and residents, which they didn't put residents under stakeholders, which I also made a point of in my research.
Good. Any other questions? No, if not, thank you very much for this. Let's do transition to the next sustainability. Yes, I have.